On the 7th of October, Hamas launched an all-out attack on Israel. The terror attack has killed hundreds of civilians. Even women and children were not spared. Thousands of rockets were launched, and this was followed by Hamas terrorists infiltrating Israel. They even used air gliders to commence the attack. Hamas declared war on Israel, and they called it Operation Al-Aqsa Flood. What are the Hamas's objectives with Operation Al-Aqsa Flood? That is still unknown. But here's what the first leg of the operation is all about.
We have decided to put an end to Israeli offenses with God's help, so the enemy understands that the time of wreaking without being held accountable is over. We announced the start of Al-Aqsa Flood operation. We also announced, with the help and strength of God, that the first strike of Al-Aqsa Flood operation has targeted sites of the enemy, its airports and military fortifications during the first 20 minutes, with more than 5,000 rockets and missiles launched.
Hamas is trying to emulate an organized army, a professional military, but only in paper, not in action. Professional armies usually give their operations a code name so that the missions can be archived and brought up easily. It's basically for the military's memory. So why is Hamas calling its attacks on Israel Operation Al-Aqsa Flood? To know the nomenclature for Hamas's attacks, it's important to understand the complex and sensitive issue that has turned a place of worship into a point of conflict. The Temple Mount is located in Jerusalem. It's the holiest place for Jews. It's also referred to as the Dome of Rock. However, the compound also houses the third holiest site in Islam, called the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Dome of Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are often confused to be the same building, but in reality, they are two different buildings in the same compound. The compound also has the Western Wall. It's the last remnant of the Sun Temple, which dates back almost 2,000 years. But because of the restrictions on entering the Temple Mount, Jews pray outside the compound by facing the Western Wall. The site is also a place of worship for Christians, and it's heavily guarded by Israeli police and soldiers. And the main reason for the heavy security presence is that the compound has become highly contested between Jews and Muslims. Tensions between Israelis and Palestinians have been high in the last few years, but there was a dramatic change this year. Almost 6 months ago, clashes started erupting in the compound, particularly during the holy month of Ramzan. What happened was that hundreds of Palestinians barricaded themselves in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. In response, Israeli police raided the holy site and found rockets, Molotov cocktails, and stones. This led to more intense clashes and hundreds of arrests. Several nations like Turkey, Qatar, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia condemned the actions of Israel. But the fire had been ignited. After the clashes at Al-Aqsa Mosque, Hamas vowed to seek revenge. The militant wing launched a barrage of rockets at Israel, as Hamas started plotting for an attack that led to the war that we're seeing today. So why did Hamas call their attack on Israel Operation Al-Aqsa Flood? Does naming the mission after one of Islam's holiest sites justify the killing of innocent women and children? Is Hamas's operation fair on the Palestinians living in Gaza, who now have to bear the force of Israel's military might? Hamas thinks its actions are justified because, in their opinion, this is a revolution against Israel.
This day is the Great Revolution Day to put an end to the last occupation and last apartheid regime in the world.
So why were the attacks named after the mosque? Was it tied to the protection of the Al-Aqsa holy site? Was it to gather support from Palestinians? Or was it to garner sympathies of other Muslim nations? Or maybe it was a mix of all three. Hamas hasn't really disclosed the reason of why the attacks were called Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, and we may never even find out. But Israel and Hamas are at war because of it. Now the armed forces of Israel are on a war footing. They have vowed to take revenge for the attacks carried out by Hamas. Israel's operation has been codenamed Iron Swords. The meaning behind it hasn't been disclosed. But the war between Israel and Hamas is raging on, regardless of what the operations have been codenamed.